Hello, and welcome to the MFGCast is Broken. I'm your host, E. Wyatt, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Curtis. How are you today, Curtis?
I love how you literally even took the part of the name of the other podcast that you ripped off and put it into it. Oh my good Lord.
Yes. So as you may be able to tell from that intro, I have been listening to a ton of This Game is Broken, which I have to say is probably one of the greatest podcast concepts, outside of ours, of course. It's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway? And BGG had a baby. So, so if you would like to hear the very entertaining antics of a couple of Americans, a couple of Brits, a Dutchman, and a whole slew of special guests that they get on for these various episodes, highly recommend checking it out. One of the other beautiful things is really short episodes. So you can listen to like an entire season in like 2 days, kind of like I did. So
very nice.
At MFGcast, we always like to help support our fellow creators and content makers in the world of board games. So figured give them a little shout out.
That's true. I think we should do that a little bit more. I think we instead of spotlighting games a lot, maybe we should sometimes spotlight other podcasts that are great.
Yeah. And if you want to listen to a podcast that's also really great, check out the MFGcast, one of the greatest board gaming podcasts around.
Very nice.
With years and years of backlog of episodes, there's always something to listen to.
That's true. That's very true. So tonight we're going to be talking about Spirit Island by Greater Than Games because Dan just kept going, dude, you got to buy this game. It's so good. And then he's like, and then as soon as we got it, he's like, dude, why haven't you played this yet? And we're like, life is getting in the way. He's like, no, that's not an excuse. You need to get this game out and you need to play it and you need to revel in its greatness. So I was able to do that. And this is why we're on to talk about it.
Now, see, when I planted the stolen merchandise in your car so you would get fired from your job to get more time to play board games, you were upset at first, but now you're not that mad, right?
I'm going to tell you, the having like no money kind of sucks, but like having all the free time in the world, oh, it's the best.
I was going to say, it's one of those things, like if you have a choice of $1,000 and no hours or 1,000 hours and no dollars, you can make your own fun for free. But
that is true.
After a string of 12-hour days, 6 days in a row, I'm like, I miss doing anything.
Yeah, no kidding. I was telling Dan before we got on, he's like, we were trying to come up with some things for this fun thing at the end. And I'm like, literally, I'm like, I've been running around so much lately that literally I find myself, my brain just shutting down and like nothing coming out, nothing good except for me staring at a wall. So,
yeah, I'm like trying to binge out whatever ideas I get on that 25-minute drive home. It's like, come on, think of something.
Yeah, literally, I'm at dinner going, oh man, just come on, just work. Just come on, brain. Just help me out just a little bit. Nothing.
Well, I was actually wondering, like, because I know you had to go out with the family for Halloween and everything yesterday. I was like, man, if we were able to broadcast this yesterday, we could be like, ooh, it's a Halloween special with Spirit Island. But it's not that kind of game.
Yeah, it really is. It's not really spooky.
Yeah, it's like, but now I have an idea for a Kickstarter game. I can make Spirits Island, where it's, all the dead haunting and stuff like that. That'll be great.
It's when the settlers and stuff like that come back from the dead and haunt the island.
Yeah, and I'll be like that Foxfire game or whatever it was, where everything was massive darkness except they just changed like 4 letters.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like in Spirits Island, there's minor powers and major powers, not minor power and major power. So it's a very different game, and and they're not the Dahan, they're the Tahan. So you can tell this is a completely different race of people.
Nice.
Our meeples are painted red. See, it's not the same game at all. 2 lawyers and $100,000 later. Oh yeah, it was the same game. I see the folly of my ways now. So anyway, so barring that, do you want to just get right into this, man? You want to dive headfirst into the waters of the Spirit Island?
Well, yeah. If we're going to call this episode a spotlight, of course we got to just jump right into it.
Okay. So I am going to save everyone from my visage for a little while and flip it over to components of Spirit Island. Ooh, it's haunting, isn't it? All right, that's the end of the Halloween stupid spirit jokes.
Thank you.
So you're very welcome. All right. So first things first, there's tons of great games every year, right? And usually most of the great games, it's either like super thematic or very well, like a mechanically super sound game, right? And what I love about Spirit Island is it's a fusion of the two. I've mentioned a few times in the past, like this is probably my favorite co-op game next to Pandemic Legacy Season 2. But that thing is a very fixed game. You cannot just break that out willy-nilly with your buds. It's like, hey, man, you guys want to jump into August?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you talk to me about playing this game, I was like, wow, it sounds like a lot of fun. It looks like, let's just get into it. And I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but like me and Tracy tried to break this out the first time or one of the nights that we got it. And we just started opening it up and starting to read the directions and stuff like that. And this is a game that is not one of those you can just jump into if you've never played it before. You have to, there's a lot of text. There's a lot of meaning behind certain things. Once you kind of get through the instructions and stuff like that and start to play it, you can kind of grasp how it works. But the first go at it, especially for us, was just like, we must have played it way late at night and we're trying to kind of like almost force ourselves to do it. And we're both like, this is just too much for our brains tonight. So we put it away, and eventually I had to come back to it, playing it single player, but I'll kind of talk about that later. I just thought I would comment on that.
Yeah. And you know what? Our very first game, we messed up a little bit on the setup. And our second game, like, we smoothed it out, but it is a game. Now, here's one thing about the game too. Everyone has variable powers, right? Like, all the spirits play differently. And in any game that has things like that going on with simultaneous play, it's very easy for new players to make mistakes. They might overlook a ruling of a card. They might ignore a power that they can do. So when you're playing with new players, sometimes you have to do a little bit of hand-holding just to get them through that first game so they can actually, like, on their own realize everything that the game offers. Because now you'll notice in the backgrounds, like, the board, and that's like, a two-player island. It looks pretty simplistic, right? It's like, okay, there's 4 different color zones. There's only a few spaces. How hard can this be? But when you factor in, there's like a dozen different spirits. If you play with the expansion, there's like variable tokens and powers and phases that can be skipped and a whole bunch of new cards and everything. There's a lot to feed on in this game, And that to me is one of the beautiful things. I really enjoy a lot of co-ops, right? And you play Pandemic and you play Flashpoint and everything. Those games are fun. But there's only so much in the game, right? Like how many times would you say you played Flashpoint?
At this point now, I think we've only played it about 3 times.
All right, so you played a small handful. So there's like the different firefighters and everything, but ultimately it pretty much boils down to the same thing of get the people, get them out. There's different maps that help change the game up a little bit, but there's never like outside forces. Like, there's no events or anything else going on. So the game is fun, but it's not too deep, right?
Yeah.
Now, this game, the variability is through the roof, because even though you're using a smaller deck, like, there's a very small deck that's very simple that indicates how, like, society is advancing, right? Now, and I realize in retrospect I might be jumping around a little bit, but just bear with me. Because the whole concept of the game is like the spirits trying to stop the growth of like an industrial nations invading their island. Like, they're bringing waste, they're bringing overpopulation, like they're destroying the essence of the island. And it's an anti-colonization game. You're actually destroying these cities, and you're repelling these invaders, and you're crushing their cities and their townships and thwarting their plans of expanding. So in turn, every Euro game I play for the rest of my life, if I lose and the game is like to expand, I must be like, well, the spirits clearly didn't like me most. That's going to be my excuse for every loss from now on in any expansion game I play. I could have won if it wasn't for Ocean's Hungry Grasp. That's why I lost this game. People are like, what? I'm like, you know what I mean.
Yeah. So what do you? So you're talking about, this game has a lot of things that kind of variable it up. God, is that even a phrase?
I think it is.
What are the certain things that make the replayability on it so variant, so variable? Sorry.
So let's just start with the spirits themselves, right? So the spirits that are native to this land that are repelling these invaders, they're all very different. And I'll give you an idea if you can kind of notice it on the back here. Take, for example, this is Ocean's Hungry Grasp, right? And I know I'm still learning the whole ropes of I feel like I'm working with green screen, trying to line things up well for this camera. So, but they give you a story of these spirits up top, which is really cool for thematic, right? And then it explains your setup, your play style, and you'll actually notice you have a complexity rating, and then it gives you an idea of how that spirit is, with offense, control, fear, defense, and utility. So right out of the gate, you got all these variable spirits, each with a different starting deck, different starting locations, and how they handle the invaders at early game. So that alone is great. On top of that, you'll notice this board, it's not super modular, but you can do different island setups that'll in turn put different land types together. And as the explorers grow, these cards will dictate where they're going into next and where they're building and where they're ravaging the land and driving out the natives. Based on your island setup and how you control the board, cards can always come up that'll throw you off. You'll be like, oh man, we're doing really good. We're doing great. And then all of a sudden you'll get the explorers come to the coastal lands, which means all of this and all of this now gets explorers. And you're like, but we just cleared those areas out. Oh my God, we got to work quick. Otherwise they're going to develop all over again. The change, the challenge, the amount of different powers you have, it just lends to so much replay. And I think that's an amazing concept for this game. Like Shadow Flickers Like Flame in Ocean's Hungry Grasp will have a different game than, say, The River That Surges in Sunlight with Thunderspeaker, because you'll have to play differently. It's like in Pandemic, you're always trying to get rid of the cubes. But there's only one way to do it. You go there and you do the action to get rid of the cubes. In this game, the powers, the cards, and even your spirit's innate powers, because it's not just playing cards. On the bottom of each of the spirits down here, they have their own powers that they can trigger just by playing other cards with symbols. So you actually really feel like this spirit exists in some capacity, because no matter what they're doing, their own powers are coming through the cards you play.
Yeah. And like you said with Pandemic, everybody has a certain role which gives them a special ability, but with the certain spirits in this game, even the on the top of your board where it says growth is basically what you do before you start your round. Each one of those is different depending upon who you play. So, or which spirit you play. So, you could, that variable can line it up game per game, and then depending upon if you're playing it singly or with, however many people, there's different variants on how you play it with those other people, because you're using your cards to kind of also bounce off other spirits too, which you can do, so there's just so much there that lends to that, more of that variability on it.
And that's one of the other things that's really interesting too. Every time you approach this game, it's not just using your spirit, because Shadow Flicker Like Flame, could end up playing differently in 2 different games.
Yeah.
You might have it where the other spirits are covering enough. So, like, to quick backtrack for a second, you were talking about the growth of the spirits, right? So what Kurt was mentioning up here on the top is at the beginning of each round, players are going to do something, again, all different. Like, you might choose to reclaim your cards because, you're low on hand and you need to draw more. You might just want to end up expanding and growing more. So you might be choosing to put down more of your presence, which is where your powers focus from. Like over here, the Shadow Flicker like Flame, you can actually put a presence really far from where you already are. So again, like with this board up here, I might say, you know what? I have low power. I need more power. And I'm going to put 1, 2, 3 spaces over here. I get 3 energy to play my cards. And now every turn I'm generating a power. Now, what I just shown you by revealing that is my second, like another aspect of this game. And it's like one of my second favorite things. It's almost reminiscent of games like Terra Mystica and like these, as you reveal your tableau, you gain games like Clans of Caledonia, which we played not too long ago. Every time you're placing presence, you're showing more things that you can do. So take, for example, let's say I'm building up like this because I really want to play a lot of cards every turn. So now, with the way that I decided to expand, maybe I wasn't drawing too many cards. Maybe I was just banking up a lot of energy. But now I can play 4 cards a turn. Right? That's pretty impressive. I can actually play all my starters every turn if I wanted to. And those cards are cheap. They're only like 0, 1, or 2 in the cost. You might end up playing a game where you don't get to expand that fast. Maybe you're growing a lot slower because you're having to go so heavy that you need to keep reclaiming your cards and getting more power cards. I love that aspect of this game. I love that 2 people can play the same spirit in the same essence, but the approach is completely different. And I think that's something amazing.
Yeah. And another thing I like about this game too, that, changes that variability too. I know we're kind of sticking with a theme here, but, there's certain aspects of this game which can kind of upgrade it, can make it more difficult, that kind of thing, where you can have the Blighted Island, which gives you more blight, that's one of the losing conditions if all the blight's out, runs out. The scenarios, that's another thing that kind of keeps the replayability, going and stuff like that. It's one of those things where, like, technically with what you get in this box, which you get, quite a few things, but it's not technically a lot, but it really changes the aspect of every single game you play depending upon what you use and don't use.
Yeah, and this game, like Branch and Claw, like the expansion for the game, I was lucky. Like when I picked the game up, both things were in stock, and it was at the time when this game was blowing out in like 3 hours all the time. So I was like, hell with it. Let me get the expansion too, just so this way it's not like it's out of stock for 3 months again or whatever. That actually adds a new idea, which is event cards. And basically like what these do is it's even more variability, like the rising interest in the island. Your island is unlike any of the invaders have ever seen. The leader begins to take interest in tales and strangeness. Now you can either like ignore the curiosity or weave lies in the minds of the observers. And these are like variable, like little options, things that change it up even more.
Yeah, it makes me think of Dead of Winter kind of with those, one of those cards, the Crossroads cards kind of.
Yeah, the Crossroads and like the everyday challenge events and everything. One of the other things that the expansion added is, so there's these healthy island cards, right? And these are all the same. They're always going to note 2 blight per player. Any blight removed from the board comes back here. And if there's no blight, flip it. The base game only comes with 2 variations. You'll notice that the expansion adds a bit more, nice. Right? And these are, what I like about this is another valuable thing. it kind of like almost reminds me of the pandemic infection cards, where when they come out, you're like, oh no. Except it's kind of like if you got all your infection cards at once and you're like, oh no. These are all different variations on what's going to happen when you run out of blight. So like take, for example, some of them like this, it's a pall upon the land. Everyone loses a presence and removes a town. And then you put 3 blight per player on the sick island, right? The blighted island. And once the blight runs out, that's a lost condition. This one is like pretty interesting. This one is back against the wall. Every spirit gains an energy, +1 energy and +1 card play. So you're actually, everyone's able to get more energy every round and play more cards per turn, but you only put 2 blight per player, which can run out really, really fast.
Yeah.
So you all get amped up, but at the same time, you're that much closer to death. This one, tipping point. Everyone destroys 3 presents. That's a lot.
It sure is.
But you put
especially
5.
What do you start with? Like,
most people start with like 2 on the board. So it's like, and here's another thing. If at any time a spirit has no presence on the island, you guys lose. So if somebody's like, yeah, so if this flips and somebody only has 3 on the board, they're like, man, I should have played better. But this one will actually put 5 blight per player. So you have a lot more room to play with on that blight when this one comes out. And that's, again, just some of the variability. You know, Kurt, you mentioned the scenarios and the invaders. There's all variations with that. Like, variability in this game is astronomical. I am sitting at, I would say, about 8 or 9 plays now. And I'm still finding myself hungry to get to the next game, which is fantastic.
Nice.
You know, like, and the best part is the interest is still there. I will say this. I have noticed at times at 4 players, the game goes a little bit lengthy. Because there's, like, you know, a lot of discussion going on and everything, but it's never a slog for me in this game. You know, sometimes like I'll play a game that's like 3 hours and I'm like, I want to do something else now. You know?
Yeah.
I've never hit that with this because I guess part of it is actually like just what we were saying before, like the thematics, right? And just to give you an idea of some of these themes and everything, again, with these growth options, you have the ability to like gain new cards, right? So let's just say you pick up the top 4 cards, because every time you gain a power, you're going to draw 4, look at them, and choose 1 to keep. You might want to choose, like, say, the Visions of Fiery Doom, right? Can you think of better visions? Now, like, there's a lot, you know, there's a bit on the cards, right? Like, you know, we got our cost, how much you're spending in your energy. You got the symbols that will be added to your pool to trigger powers and other abilities on cards. You'll have the effect and like all this information, like how fast the card plays, the range, what you can target and everything. Like this card right here, right, is, you know, you get a fear, you can put like move some people around. If you have 2 fire symbols, you get another fear. Now, like Shadow Flicker like Flame, he loves moon and fire symbols, and this card is moon and fire. You might want this just because of that, right? You might want, say, Drought, because this lets you destroy towns.
Can you move
and
it up just a little bit so I can see it?
There we
So
go.
everyone else can. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So like Drought, well, like just destroy a whole bunch of towns. It's a slower card, but destroying things is always nice. Also adds a blight, so you're kind of playing with fire, right? You might want to get the Disorienting Landscape. This is like, again, from the expansion, right? You know, like this, because over here you'll see like there's these new symbols like strife and disease and everything. But again, this lets you like move some people around. You'll notice it has a couple of symbols on the side. That might be it. Or you might want the Uncanny Melting. This actually will help you remove blight. So, but you can only do it from like the deserts and the wetlands, but still. So take, for example, if somebody else is, say, using Drought, you might use Uncanny Melting to help remove the blight that your ally put down. You're working in tandem. You're destroying invaders. You're healing the lands. Like, and that's just off of 4 cards. You know, like that was just a random 4 off of this stack, man. Look at all these cards. Right? So many cards. Like, I mean, that's fantastic. And I mean, that's like part of the appeal of this game. Like, sometimes you want another power card because you're like, man, I got to do something else. Sometimes you want another power card just because you want to look at some names, you know?
Yeah, and depending upon your presence too, the higher the power, because like if they have if you have the two presence and the one land, that's called was it called a sacred site? Or
yes, which is
yep.
And it's like almost like a beacon of power that. So take for example, like the Shadow Flicker like Flame, his special innate powers can only be triggered off of those special beacons. So it's a great power, but it's a little restrictive in when and where you can use it. Now we talked a lot about him, right? He was my example for a lot of things. Here's another one of my favorites, the Ocean's Hungry Grasp. Now, this spirit actually is the only one that can go in the oceans. And in addition to that, he gains a special power of drowning. He can literally drown cities and invaders and everything else and use their death as fuel for his powers. Like, you put everything destroyed on your board and you can convert them into energy. You kind of almost got to think of like the alien machines, and and that just like grind up people for fuel. It's kind of like that, except you're the ocean. Again, like, what I love is talking thematic. His growth and expansion goes in and out with the tides. Like, when you reclaim your cards, your power draws back into the ocean. When you decide to like put on coastal lands and gain cards, you go onto the shores of these lands. That's an awesome concept to me.
It's the total. If a ocean was a real spirit, it would be, wait for you to come to the coast so I can destroy you and then go back into my slumber until next time.
And like, I love that idea. It's just like, so. And I'll quickly show you the next three spirits, like super quick, but like, take for example, I'm going to compare some of this to almost like Magic players, right? Say you got somebody that likes control decks or likes to, like to play really defensive style in their real-time strategy games or something. The Vital Strength of the Earth is the perfect spirit for them. You grow slow, but your power beacons are natural defenses for the island. Just no matter wherever you have two presence, automatically fortifies up, right? I mean, this guy can get tremendous power. He's not going to be playing half a dozen cards per turn. You'll notice it takes like 2 growth to get to even being able to play 2 cards. But when you play cards, you're going to be leaving a hole in the ground for people.
Yeah, exactly. It's like just what he looks like. He's going to be strong as heck. He's going to destroy a lot of stuff, but he's slow because he's big.
Yep. Say you got somebody that loves red deck wins in Magic, and like, every time they play a game, they're like, I want a glass cannon. I want to do 1,000 damage per turn, and I don't care how fine I am afterwards. The Lightning Swift Strike is perfect for them. Being able to play cards super quick, one of the few spirits that starts out being able to play 2. His innate powers always lend to destruction. The spirit itself, whenever you have symbols with the shadow, I believe it is, you can automatically make slow cards fast. So you can be like, I'm doing this now. I'm doing this now. I'm doing this now. Very fun spirit to play. Fantastic. Slow energy growth, but if you like to play cheap cards, it's amazing. And let's just say you like to play somebody that likes to play a heavy green style in Magic. They want to ramp up their.
I'm gonna totally cut you off. Just because this is something I wanted to talk about before you started going into this, so I'm glad you did. So when we played, here I'm gonna click on myself here for a second. So when we were playing the other night, when me and Mike were playing 2-player Spirit Island, I actually played Lightning Swift Strike, and then Mike played River Surges and Sunlight. Okay, so this is just quick, but with that one power that you said that you can turn 2 slower cards into fast cards. Basically, what I was doing is I was turning Mike's 2 cards into slow cards, and then he was using was it this one? Nope, it wasn't this one. He was playing. Oh, I screwed it up. He was actually playing Vital Strength of Earth. Okay.
Okay.
And so then eventually he ended up playing his innate power, where target spirit can repeat 1 power card with an energy cost of 1 or less, and that was that one. So then I would be like, okay, well, I made yours go fast. Now I'm going to make mine go fast. So we were able to combo off of that and really just do some really great destruction there. So, and the funny thing about Lightning Swift Strike 2, because we played the introductory game, and it basically gives you, I think, like 8 cards of a mix of minor and major. They just kind of tell you to use those instead of drawing 4 and keeping 1 or whatever. Yeah. And it's like every card that Lightning Swift Strike had was like, you think it would be like, Lightning's Revenge or like Shock the Earth, but it was like all fire. It's like Hellfire and fire this and fire that. And I'm like, whoa, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it. They always say the biggest threat during a rainstorm is fires because of the lightning.
That's true.
Just remember, lightning usually only takes out a person. It's the fires that come from the lightning that take out the houses and the buildings and and everything else.
Yeah, and the innate powers for that spirit are just crazy.
Yeah, so with what you were just mentioning, let's talk about that real quick. This game again has one of the greatest ideas where for new players, or if it's everyone's first time, they give you that pre-constructed deck idea where it's like, instead of drawing randomly, put these cards in the stack, and whenever you draw a power, just take from this. And it's an awesome way to have the symbols line up with your spirit so you can use your powers more and more. It's very thematic for what your spirit would take, and it makes it easier for new players. Instead of oh, here's 100 choices and try to figure out which ones are good. It's like, here's no choice, but you're going to like what this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
The book gives some good examples. I think it's a pretty well written rule book, and that setup for new players, I really appreciate it. I love that they put that in, and I love that effort, because so many times, trying to teach somebody new, sometimes it's hard to teach people certain games when they're evolving like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Because your game with Mike, was that Mike's first time playing?
It was.
Okay. In the beginning, was he like, oh yeah, how hard can this be? And then 3 rounds later, he's like, oh my God, why are they everywhere?
No, I think he was very just kind of he kind of went with it. Here, I'm going to go back to myself. I think he was very I'm just going to try to figure out what it's all about and stuff like that. And when I kind of was going through what we were supposed to do, I'm like, it's kind of a co-op. It is a co-op game where you're instead of trying to settle on land, you're trying to destroy the people that are trying to settle the land. And I could tell right away. He's like, okay, tell me more. And then, and I was like, yeah. And then you use these cards to just, wipe out, cities and towns and, people. And he's like, okay, that sounds awesome. And then he didn't say a lot, but then the more as we played, you could tell he got a little more into it. He didn't talk a lot. The only time we ever talked is when we were talking about what we wanted to accomplish together. Because it was like, okay, wait, I'm going to do this first, and then you do that next, and stuff like that. And then by the end, I was like, I waited for him because we were trying to figure it out. It was kind of getting late, so we actually didn't get to finish our game, unfortunately.
Ooh.
But we were, doing pretty good, and we were like, well, should we quit now or should we take a picture of it and then we play later? And Mike's like, let's play one more round. So we played that round. He did really good. My turn sucked. I hated it. I was like, I can't do anything. I played one card and I was so mad. I was like, screw it, And then I was like, so what do you want to do? And he's like, well, how about we just clean it up and then we could just play it next time. And I said, okay, sounds good to me. And then as we're walking out, I go, well, maybe next week we could play something that's a little less complex. He's like, oh no, I want to play this again next week. So let's play it again next week. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
So if that tells you anything about the game.
One of my favorites is my buddy Ramsey's. We played this together about, I would say he's been in almost like half the games. He's been here for about 4 of them. And anytime I text him, I'm like, hey man, how do you feel about Spirit Island? I just get back like, yes, destroy the invaders or something like that, which is awesome. Like, it's one thing when people are like, yeah, man, let's play that. Like, all right, cool. But when somebody's excited to play the game as well, that is like one of the greatest feelings on earth.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, don't get me wrong. If I'm like, hey man, you want to play Santorini? And someone's like, sure, I'll play. That's, I'll take it. But if somebody goes, only if I get to be Hades, like, all right, that's awesome. Like, yes, let's play.
Yeah, that's how you want people to get in that game.
Yeah. One thing I also really enjoy is Kim. Now, by the way, on a side note, she would be joining us if she didn't have a case of Fallout beta testitis, because she is on the beta for Fallout 76 as we speak. So, but one thing I enjoy is even whenever Kim and I go to play this game, before the box is even open, she's like, oh, can I try out this spirit? Or, she doesn't necessarily call it like the spread of rampant green, but she'd be like, the plant guy that just grows really fast. Close enough. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. You can use any spirit you please. And that's one of the other things about this game I really enjoy too. It's just like the thematic, taking a jump back to the thematic. And since we mentioned him, I will put out a spread of rampant green for a little bit of observation. What I enjoy is if somebody's like just like gamer game, right? Where they're like, okay, need to destroy invaders. I need cards to destroy the invaders. You can do that, right? You can play the game straight out. But if you take the time to like read over these titles and if you give a little tale when you do your powers, the game is super fun. Like when you rain death down upon them, you could be like, oh yeah, I destroyed these 2 towns. But like if you play the card and it's like, sometimes humanity is its own greatest enemy, for you see the retching terrors that dwell in the minds of man, and you explain like how they get destroyed. So I'm like, yeah, I mean, granted, yeah, that might be explaining why our games are sometimes 3 hours, but it's great.
So you're adding your own flavor text.
Yeah, it's like when you take, for example, play a card like the Song of Sanctity or like the Cult of Ferocity, you're like, all right, yeah, it's like, let's do a little bit of calming piece here and things like that, try to help cleanse it. But when you play the card, say, death falls gently from open blossoms, carries a bit more of a sinister vibe, no?
It sure does.
So let me ask you, like, your experiences so far with the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know it was a bit of time from when you got it to when you were actually able to bring it to the table. Mm-hmm. Did you immediately wish you got to play it sooner from when you got it?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when we talked about it when we first attempted to play it, we had like a real sour taste in our mouths as soon as it was done. It was just kind of like, okay, this just seems so involved. I don't know how we're going to figure this out. I don't know if we didn't even know if it would even be fun, And then, I texted you the other night and I said, you know what? I feel like I'm never going to get this game out until I do something about it. And I looked at it and it had said it was 1 player. And I'm like, it's 1 player. Jeez, if I would have known that, I would have just tried this a long time ago. Teach myself, because then, I'm not boring Tracy or making her frustrated if that's not her thing, And so, it was a night where Logan was watching something he wanted on TV. Tracy was on her phone. She wasn't looking up. And I was like, you know what? You guys are just having fun hanging out. I'm going to go teach myself this game, And, just like playing any game, you kind of have to go through the motions and try to figure stuff out. And unfortunately, I didn't have a reference to bounce off of. Like, I could have called you, I could have texted you, but I was like, no, I want to do this myself, So I actually read through the rule book, and I thought I did actually a pretty good job because I focused on it instead of just going, okay, nope, don't care about that. Oh, okay, I think I get that, and then just trying to get into it, and played it and kind of went through the motions. And even though I got my ass handed to me, because when you're playing one player, you have certain abilities that you can kind of do twice because you can't bounce it off your spirit or another spirit player, or 2, 3 or whatever. But also some of the other ones that are on the bottoms of your cards that you can bounce off of just other spirits, you can't. So it kind of limits you in some of the things you do. So when I was playing it, I was kind of like, well, I don't really know where to go. And I'm like, well, I'm just slowly trying to, find my way around and, try to destroy cities and stuff like that. And I ended up killing up more villagers than anything, or just getting those guys instead, because I was like, I'm never going to be able to do this because I just feel like I wasn't getting to where I needed to be. So it was kind of a slow burn. But when I was done, I still was like, I get this now. This actually isn't that bad of a game. It just took me a bit to get into it. I think it took me just going through the motions and actually reading through the rule book and to get an understanding of it. It worked. But also I was just kind of like, I almost had a challenge in the back of my head, like, I really want to beat this game or come close to it at least, because I felt like in my one-player game, I just couldn't quite get my fitting. But again, it was just the first game, so, you can't really say much off of that. So then finally when me and Mike played, I was like, okay, now I'm getting it. I'm starting to get, what happens here. And one of my favorite mechanism of this game is being able to bounce the cards off of other spirits and stuff like that, and be able to do a bunch of combos that not only help you, but your other fellow players and stuff like that. So, so that aspect was just super fun, and then, knowing that there's other stuff in the box that I can, kind of use, and you don't have to, use all the stuff together at once if you don't want to. You could put a scenario in there. You could put what adversary or whatever. You can, do these kind of things and, really up the game, or make the, they're like, oh, you not enough challenge. I don't know who the hell says that, but it's like, here's more stuff that can challenge you. So the progress of each game, got me more intrigued. So, this is a game that it lends itself to say, okay, I need to play this again to see where I can go. And plus with the different spirits and stuff like that also is like, wow, well, I just, I've played with this guy and I've kind of gotten used to him. Now I'm going to go use this guy or girl or whatever. So it's cool the way it really lends itself to different ways of playing it.
Yeah. I haven't ever actually done the complete solo play of this yet. I have done it where I was operating 2 spirits.
Oh.
Yeah, it's so basically, you just keep the cards for each of the spirits. Like I was doing it, to the right of the spirit board was in hand, to the left is cards played.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, so it was like 2 boards and stuff like that. I never actually tried just the solo play.
Yeah, and that's part, and it's hard because of, with your blight, like, eventually if I end up using the blighted island, and you could use the cascading, which means it, you add another blight adjacent to the blight that's already on the board. Like if you have a small board like that, then you're just like, oh God, what do I do now?
Yeah, I can see it ending really, really fast. You might not even have enough blight to cascade on your island. So, I mean, at least on the plus side, you die faster.
Sweet.
Yeah. It's like there's still some nice areas left when you're eradicated. So I mean, I have gushing going on about the thematics and like the style and the variability. The one thing I also want to address in this game is like that concept of challenge, right? Because they always say the mark of a good co-op is that you lose more than you win, and that you have a fun time losing. And I would say we have actually won this more than we lost, which I always worry if like everyone is playing right when we win. Like,
that's always fun.
Yeah, because it's like, there's nothing quite like, like, oh, I play this card and I get to destroy these 2 towns because it does 7 damage and we win. And you're like, that can only be played on wetlands. And they're like, oh. And you're like, please don't tell me you played that card 4 times already this game when I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, that part is definitely hard. I do agree, because especially with the sacred sites, like you have to be careful with that, because like even like this, like you've got that a spread of rampant green there, like his other innate power is it has to be a sacred site. It has to be within one range of a sacred site. And sometimes when you see that kind of stuff, sometimes it doesn't quite click. Sometimes you think, okay, I just have a presence there so I can do it. Sometimes you have to remember all the certain things that you have to do. And that's where sometimes it can kind of get murky. So you have to kind of really pay attention when you're doing certain things that you're really using these abilities and powers right.
Yeah, and so see, that's the thing. It's like with the spread of rampant green, for example, it's like the 1 power is slow and just at a range 0. So anywhere you have any presence, and then the other power is fast and only done at the sacred, but has a range of 1. There's a lot of things. Hold on 1 second. We got, good God. I don't know if you heard that thud. My dog trying to jump on the table just bashed his head.
Well, luckily I didn't hear it, so no one else probably did. Hopefully he's okay.
What were you gonna say?
I said hopefully he's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say we might have to look into like an MFGCast, concussion protocol. So, but
he's got to take 1 live episode off at least,
right? So this was actually the perfect draw. With what we were saying is like, take for example this card. Its range is 1, but you can only target mountains or jungles. Things like that are very important to pay attention to for this game, because if somebody ignores those things, you're making the game too easy. Like you're targeting areas you shouldn't be able to, or you might be expanding into spots you shouldn't be in. And that will definitely put the swing in your favor, But that being said, when we have played games and lost in this, we have had some awesome, like just times of loss. Like one game we had, there was a sector where they were built up very powerfully. And the problem was blight was cascading and in turn destroying presence near it. So we couldn't get close enough to use our powers to stop them. We were just like, oh no. It's like, we're like, maybe the Dahan can fight back, and then like they obliterate all the Dahan, and we're like, or not, that'll happen too. It's like,
yeah, I love that. Speaking of the Dahan, I love that you have these villagers or sacred followers or whatever that will help fight for you. That will, it's not just you doing it or your players. You actually have some minions that help you out also.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because like I played with a couple of people that when like the Dahan are getting wiped out, they're like, well, I guess those huts are going away. Or like, people that just use them as expendable resource, like, yeah, the explorers will kill like do 5 damage, but as long as there's 2 huts left, they can take out that city. And then I've also played with people that are like, no man, I don't want to lose any of the Dahan. Like, like we're here to protect people.
Yeah, that was me. That was me and Mike. We were it was the former. We were just like, you guys, you love us. You will sacrifice yourselves for us.
So you were vengeful gods.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
No, see.
So I take it none of you are playing Thunderspeaker, which is so awesome because it's actually a spirit that inhabits the vessel of a Dahan. Nice. And again, thematically, I think that is something incredible. It is one of the few spirits I haven't played yet, mainly because I'm afraid of how savage the ass whooping will be when I use her. So just to give you an idea, Thunderspeaker, your presence can move with the Dahan. So you actually, because you are one of them, which is really cool. But for each Dahan killed by invaders or by invaders ravaging the land, you destroy one of your presence within one, which is awful. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are one with the Dahan. So if you can't protect them, then you're going down too.
Yeah, either that, or if they're about to die, you have to move them really far away from you. It's like, nope, they're at least two away. I'm good. It's like,
yeah. You're like, stay away from me. All I'm doing is killing you.
Yeah, it's like, help us, Thunderspeaker. I'm too far. I can't hear you. Like, just turn the radio on.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Another aspect that I like. What's that?
As all good spirits do, turn up the radio when your followers call to you.
That's right. Hey, some spirits and some gods are that way, from what I hear. Another thing I love about this game too that helps kind of enhance the game too is when you're, using these spirits and you're killing off all of these cities and towns and stuff like that, you generate fear, which helps you get fear cards depending upon how many fear you generate, and you get all of them from your pool into the generate fear or whatever, and then you get special abilities from there, and then depending upon the terror level and stuff like that, it makes it easier for you to win too. So I like that gives that another variability on the game and kind of helps you guys out too.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is interesting too, because when teaching this game to people, when they're like, oh, how do we win? I note we have to destroy every single piece of plastic on this board. And they're like, oh, my God. But the thing is, the beauty of fear is if we get our fear up enough, all we have to do is just destroy all the towns and cities. And they're like, oh, that sounds a little easier, I guess. And then it's like, you're like, oh, or if we get to fear level 3, we can win if we just destroy all the cities. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And it's like, or if we get to the end of fear, we just win because they make it. They're like, that's super cool. And then they realize how hard it is to generate fear. And they're like, this is super hard.
Yeah. Yep, totally.
But, like I said, like the other thing too is the beauty of the game is like your win conditions are really simple like that. It's either destroy everything or progressively your needs of destruction are less by them leaving on their own accord through fear. But the concept of you can lose if like a spirit is utterly destroyed, like if no one like remembers Thunderspeaker anymore, or if the blight just destroys too much of the island, like your connection to this world is severed, or if even the invader deck runs out, it's just like, because even like in this game, what I love is the turns, it's just known as like time passes at the end of each round. It's kind of like the invaders are there so long, like your belief is eradicated. Like, I whenever I describe this game to people and I'm teaching it, I always like to give it a thematic. I always think of it thematically. It's kind of like, even though the Dahan are still there, it's like all these people bring teachings of science and other religions, and the spirits are forgotten about. Like there is nothing left of you on the island anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like the day has come where somebody has said your name for the very last time. People are like, God damn. I'm like, yeah. So don't let that deck run out, But I mean, ultimately, all in all, man, I gotta say this game, I first heard about it on a lark. I can't really remember what podcast it was, but they mentioned the ocean's hungry grasp, and they're like, yeah, you can actually play a spirit that drags people into the ocean to drown them. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. I had no idea what they were talking about. And then I checked into it, and I was like, this sounds really cool. Once I played my first game, I was hooked. And then from then on, like I've enjoyed it more and more, and I look forward more and more to playing. Part of the other reason we were talking about doing this recently is because of the recent Kickstarter for the Jagged, I think it's called like Jagged Lands expansion, which, again, like as they're going to be putting in even more spirits and like more cards and more powers and like more invaders, more this, more that. It's just a game where that variability, like it's not needed, and that expansion is not planned. Like they're going long window, which a lot of people are like, what the hell? But they put 18 months like as their projected window.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with that because I'm really tired of Kickstarters that are telling me it'll ship by January. February latest. And then it's like August and they're like, we're almost done with the printers. You're like, okay, you're 8 months late. You know, and then it's like, oh, it's about to hit the ocean. And you're like, I should have gotten this 10 months ago. And then, you know, it's like, I'd rather them say it's 2 years than tell me 1 year and be a year late. You know, like that's just like an old tired trend that I can really go without for Kickstarter. And the other part I liked about it, and you know how I feel with this, no Kickstarter exclusives. You know, which granted might turn some people off. They're also doing something else. It's a very unique approach. And I applaud them for it, even though a lot of people are like, oh, what the hell, man? They're capping out their stretch goals. They're not like going, we'll make another spirit and another and another and another. Like they had, I think it was like 8 spirits planned as is. And then there was like 2 more that were like, you know, stretch goals. They're noting that they don't plan on just coming up with even more new spirits just on the fly to make this happen. And it's also not like, oh, and we'll upgrade, you know, the cards and do this. Like they're keeping everything, the cards as they are a good quality. So they don't need to upgrade a separate set of cards. They don't need to just artificially inflate the number of powers and everything in the game. Like it's fine as it is, you know. They're going to be adding, of course, more power cards, more this and that. But just like a couple of more spirits, and they also have like the add-ons or like the neoprene map and the broken token organizer, which yes, I did put in for, because the theory is it'll be able to fit everything in one box. I can do that right now, and boy, is it tight. I can't imagine how it would fit in with the expansion stuff, but they got a way. So, but yeah, I just look forward to this game every time. It's definitely a pleasure. I really recommend to everyone try to go give this a shot. Like I said, mechanically it's great. The pressure is on. The variability is through the roof. The thematic interest is there. There's just a lot that this thing offers. And I'm really glad that this concept of anti-colonization was able to lend to such a great game.
Yeah, and it's one of those games too where it may cost a little to get, but like the replayability, I know we just keep talking about it, but it lends itself to playing tons of games and still not getting to every single little thing. It's like you could just play it through and through. You don't even, we've talked about like, I feel like a theme that we've had is like, sometimes we try to stay away from all the expansions that come out right away because we just don't need them. With this game, like eventually you may want to get those expansions because it'd be cool to have, more spirits and different cards and stuff like that. But like literally this box you can play this for a very long time and still not see everything, which is to me in itself puts it, it's, and that's puts in an invaluable sticker right on that, because it's like, some games you can play about 10 times and go, well, I know everything about this game. I can play it the ways I play it and be done with it. With this game, you can play it literally hundreds of different ways, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because like so there like so I noted that there was like no Kickstarter exclusives, right? But there is like 2 spirits that you can order through their site. They were like the Kickstarter bonus spirits that they sold as separate things after the launch of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So like like we were mentioning Flashpoint and Pandemic and games like that. Like take for example, whenever we play Pandemic, one of my buddies, I know he wants to use the medic, right? I believe it's the medic, the one that when they do the cure disease action, they cure all the cubes in their location.
Yep, correct.
I hit my medic in this game with the serpent slumbering beneath the island, right? I love it because it's a spirit that plays super different. You actually have to play a card to consume the presence of the other spirits around you so you can actually be able to expand to your full size and potential. And your innate powers grant you abilities that when you consume the other spirits, because they're a part of you, they also gain those things. Like, you're not destroying them, you're making them one with you. And that's kind of a cool idea. And it's like that, like, is my medic in this game. Like, anytime I'm playing with a few people that know the game, when it's like, I'm like, all right, does everyone understand? And everyone's like, oh yeah, no, I know how to play. It's like, awesome, I'm using the serpent, let's go. It's like,
Nice.
I'm like, I'm wondering if other people maybe like hit that spirit like that's just their thing. Like, they love that spirit. They think the power is awesome. The way it works is awesome. I can see that being the case for some people. And I can also see it being the case kind of like for Kim, where it's like, oh man, I haven't won using like that river spirit yet. Let me use the river spirit again. I want to try to win a game using him. Or it's like, oh, like, you know what? I know Thunderspeaker. I gotta try her out. She looks amazing. Like, we might lose. I don't know how to control the Dahan that well, but I want to actually lead my people. I want to use her.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would unquestionably say this is a game that everyone owes it to themselves to play at least once.
Yeah, definitely, and I agree. At one point, like I said before in the beginning, we're like, we don't get it. We're like, why is he like it so much? But now that I've been able to play it, and eventually I'll be able to teach Tracy how to play it too, and I guarantee you she'll dig it and she'll want to play it more.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So, you're about ready to wrap this up? Because I know about your end, man. It is getting a little late over here.
That's
true.
true.
A little sad that I don't have enough time to play Spirit Island tonight.
So you want to drop the pun thing? Or are we gonna not even attempt it, since my brain is fried and I couldn't come up with it?
If your brain is fried, we might have to push it back a week. It might be a little way past Halloween, but I think we can still make it work.
All right, sounds good. All right, we'll do it next time. But again, if what are your thoughts on it? Have you ever played it? Have you, is it one of your go-to games? Let us know at MFGCast on Twitter. Join our Facebook page, MFGCast, and just let us know what you think of it. And there's different player counts too. So if you played it solo, let us know, because usually I don't play a lot of solo games, and it was nice to play this solo because it was a lot of fun. So let us know. So until next time, I'm Kurt.
And this is D. Wyatt.
And this was the MFG Cast. Thanks for listening or watching. Both. How about that? See you guys later.